The red dust of Kepler 438 swirled in the morning air as Jake Martinez checked his rifle for the third time. Something felt wrong. The mining colony of New Haven had been too quiet for the past week, and Jake's gut told him trouble was coming. He stood on the watchtower, looking out at the barren landscape that stretched for miles in every direction. "See anything out there, Corporal?" Private Lisa Turner climbed up the ladder, her medkit bouncing against her hip. She was young, maybe 22, with short brown hair and steady hands that had saved more lives than Jake could count. "Nothing yet," Jake said, but he kept his eyes on the horizon. "How's the medical bay looking? Fully stocked? Got enough supplies to patch up half the colony if we need to?" Lisa adjusted her medkit strap. "You really think they're coming?" Jake nodded. The Zephyrians had been hitting human colonies for months now, moving closer to the core worlds with each attack. New Haven was small, only 300 people, but it sat on top of the richest mineral deposits in this sector. The aliens would want it down in the colony. People went about their morning routines. Children played in the streets while their parents headed to work in the mines. They trusted Jake and his small team of Marines to keep them safe. It was a heavy responsibility. Sergeant Carl Brooks jogged up to the watchtower base. "Jake, we got movement on the long-range sensors. Something big coming in fast?" Jake grabbed his communicator. "All units, this is Martinez. Battle stations, this is not a drill." The colony's alarm system began to wail. People ran for the shelters they had built into the hillside. Jake watched mothers carrying babies, fathers helping elderly neighbors. These people depended on him and his team of 12 Marines to hold off whatever was coming. "There," Lisa pointed to the sky. "What is that?" 3 black ships descended through the atmosphere, their alien design unlike anything human engineers had ever built. They were sleek and predatory, like metal sharks cutting through the air. The ships landed in a triangle formation around the colony, kicking up massive clouds of dust. "Zephyrians," Carl spat, "ugly bug-faced killers." The first aliens emerged from their ships. They stood 7 feet tall, with 4 arms and bodies covered in natural armor that looked like black metal. Their heads were triangular, with multiple eyes that glowed red in the dim light. Each one carried weapons that hummed with deadly energy. "Count them," Jake ordered, watching through his scope. 200, maybe more," Carl reported. "We're outnumbered 20 to 1. "Then we better make every shot count." Jake activated the colony's defense systems. Energy barriers flickered to life around the main buildings, and automated turrets rose from hidden positions. It would not be enough, but it might buy them some time. The Zephyrian commander stepped forward. It was bigger than the others, with golden markings on its armor. It raised one of its 4 arms, and a voice boomed across the colony in accented English. "Humans of New Haven, you are now property of the Zephyrian Empire. Surrender immediately, and you will be relocated to work camps. Resist, and you will be eliminated." Jake keyed his communicator to broadcast on all frequencies. "This is Corporal Jake Martinez, Colonial Marine Corps. New Haven does not surrender. If you want this colony, you'll have to take it." The Zephyrian commander tilted its head as if amused. "Very well. You have chosen death." The attack began with a coordinated assault on the colony's outer defenses. Zephyrian weapons fired streams of superheated plasma that cut through steel like paper. The automated turrets returned fire, their bullets bouncing harmlessly off the aliens' natural armor. "Fall back to the medical center," Jake ordered. "We'll make our stand there." The medical center was the strongest building in the colony, built into the hillside with reinforced walls and multiple exits. More importantly, it was where Lisa kept her supplies. If they were going to survive this, they would need every advantage they could get. Jake's team moved through the colony streets, covering each other as plasma bolts sizzled past their heads. Private Danny Kim took a hit in the shoulder, spinning him around and sending him crashing into a wall. "I got him," Lisa said, already moving toward the wounded Marine. "No time," Jake shouted. "We have to move." But Lisa was already there, pulling Danny to his feet and pressing a bandage to his wound. "You're okay," she told him. "Just a scratch." Danny nodded, though his face was pale with pain. They made it to the medical center just as the Zephyrians overrun the outer defenses. The aliens moved with deadly precision, their forearms allowing them to carry multiple weapons and fire in different directions simultaneously. Inside the medical center, Jake's team took positions at the windows and doorways. The building had been designed as a fortress with thick walls and narrow firing ports. It was the best defensive position they had. "How long can we hold?" Carl asked, checking his ammunition. "Long enough," Jake lied. They had maybe an hour before. The Zephyrians brought up heavy weapons and blasted through the walls. Outside, the alien commander was speaking into a communication device. Jake could not understand the words, but the tone sounded like a status report. The commander seemed confident, almost bored. Then something changed. The commander's head snapped up, and it began speaking rapidly into its device. Even from a distance, Jake could see the alien's body language shift from confidence to something that might have been concern. "What's got them all worked up?" Lisa asked. Jake watched as the commander pulled out what looked like a scanner and began sweeping it across the medical center. The device beeped and flashed, and the commander's posture became even more agitated. "They're scanning us," Carl observed. "Looking for something," the commander barked orders to its troops. Several of the aliens pulled back from their assault positions, forming a defensive perimeter instead. Jake could see them talking among themselves, their movements nervous and uncertain. "This doesn't make sense," Danny said, still holding his bandaged shoulder. "They had us. Why are they backing off?" Jake was wondering the same thing. The Zephyrians were known for their ruthless efficiency in battle. They did not hesitate, did not show mercy, and they certainly did not back down from a fight they were winning. The commander's communication device crackled to life, and Jake caught a few words in broken English. "Medical equipment confirmed. Recommend immediate withdrawal." "Did you hear that?" Lisa asked. Jake nodded. The aliens were talking about medical equipment, but why would that matter? Every human colony had medical supplies. It was nothing special. The commander seemed to be arguing with whoever was on the other end of the communication. Its voice rose in pitch, and its forearms gestured wildly. Finally, it switched back to English and addressed the humans directly. "You have medical healing devices. Our intelligence was incomplete. We require additional forces for this engagement." Jake exchanged glances with his team. The Zephyrians were backing down because they had medkits. It did not make any sense. Medical supplies were for healing, not fighting. "What do they think we're going to do?" Carl asked. "Bandage them to death?" But Jake was starting to get a bad feeling about this. The aliens clearly knew something about human medical technology that he did not. And judging by their reaction, whatever it was scared them, the commander raised its weapon toward the medical center. "You will surrender your healing devices immediately, or we will destroy this structure with you inside it." "Like hell," Jake muttered, and opened fire. Jake's rifle barked as he fired at the Zephyrian commander. The bullet sparked off the alien's armor, but it was enough to send the creature diving for cover. Within seconds, the air filled with the hiss and crackle of plasma fire as the aliens returned fire with deadly accuracy. "Keep your heads down," Jake shouted over the noise. The medical center's walls were thick, but plasma could cut through almost anything given enough time. Already he could see scorch marks appearing where the alien weapons hit. Carl Brooks moved from window to window, taking careful shots at any Zephyrian that showed itself. He was the best marksman on the team, and his rifle found its target more often than not. But the alien's armor was tough, and it took multiple hits to bring one down. "We need to save ammunition," Jake called out. "Make every shot count?" Lisa Turner crouched behind a medical cabinet, her medkit open beside her. She was not a combat soldier, but she knew how to use a rifle when needed. More importantly, she was ready to help anyone who got hurt. Danny Kim fired from a window on the left side of the building. His shoulder wound was still bleeding, but he ignored the pain. "They're trying to flank us," he reported. "Got movement on the east side. Roy, Susan, cover that side," Jake ordered. Private Roy Peterson and Private Susan Walsh moved to new positions. Their weapons trained on the eastern approach, the battle settled into a deadly rhythm. The Zephyrians advanced in short rushes, using their superior numbers to pressure the humans from multiple directions. Jake's team held them back, but barely. They were running low on ammunition, and the aliens seemed to have endless reinforcements. "Incoming!" Carl shouted. A Zephyrian heavy weapons team had set up a plasma cannon on a nearby hill. The weapon charged with a deep humming sound that made Jake's teeth ache. When it fired, the blast tore through the medical center's wall like it was made of paper. The explosion threw everyone to the ground. Jake's ears rang as he tried to get back to his feet. Through the smoke and dust, he could see a massive hole in the wall where the plasma cannon had hit. "Sound off," Jake called out. "Everyone okay?" "Lisa's down," Danny shouted. Jake's heart jumped into his throat. He crawled through the debris to where Lisa lay motionless near the destroyed wall. Blood covered her face, and her left arm was bent. At an odd angle. "Lisa, can you hear me?" Jake checked her pulse. It was weak but steady. Her eyes fluttered open. "I'm okay," she whispered, though she clearly was not. "Don't try to move," Jake said. "Your arm is broken." "Help me sit up." Lisa struggled to get upright, wincing with pain. "I can still work." Before Jake could argue, another explosion rocked the building. This time it was Carl who went down, screaming as plasma fire caught him full in the chest. The blast threw him backward, and Jake could see the terrible burn that covered most of his torso. "Carl." Jake started toward his friend, but Lisa was already moving, despite her broken arm. The medic crawled to where Carl lay dying. His chest rose and fell in short, desperate gasps. The plasma burn had gone deep, probably hitting his lungs and heart. It was the kind of wound that killed quickly. "This is bad," Lisa said, but her voice was calm and professional. She pulled supplies from her medkit with her good hand. "Really bad." Jake knelt beside them. "Can you save him?" "I don't know." "Lisa's." Fingers moved quickly, checking Carl's pulse and breathing. "He's lost a lot of blood and the burns are severe." The Zephyrian commander's voice echoed across the battlefield. "Surrender now, and we will allow your wounded to receive medical attention." "Go to hell," Jake shouted back, though he wondered if they should consider it. Carl was dying and there was nothing they could do about it. But Lisa was already working. She pulled out a small injection device and pressed it against Carl's neck. "Combat stimulant," she explained. "It'll keep his heart beating." Next came a tube of silver gel that she squeezed directly onto the plasma burn. The gel seemed to move on its own, spreading across the wound and hardening into a protective shell. Carl's breathing became slightly easier. "Biofoam," Lisa said. "It'll seal the wound and prevent infection." She worked quickly, her hands steady despite her own injuries. Jake watched in amazement as she applied bandages, injected medications, and used tools he did not recognize. Within minutes, Carl's color began to improve. "How do you feel?" Lisa asked. Carl tried to speak, coughed, and tried again. "Like I got hit by a truck." "But alive. Can you fight?" Carl struggled to sit up, Lisa helping him with her good arm. Yeah, I think so." Jake stared at his friend in disbelief. 5 minutes ago, Carl had been dying from wounds that should have killed him instantly. Now he was reaching for his rifle, ready to get back into the fight. Outside, the Zephyrians had gone quiet. Jake could see them through the windows, but they were not advancing. Instead, they seemed to be watching the medical center with what looked like fascination. "What are they doing?" Danny asked. Jake raised his binoculars and studied the alien. "Positions." The commander was talking rapidly into its communication device again, its 4 arms gesturing toward the building. Other Zephyrians were pointing scanner devices at the medical center, their readings causing obvious excitement. "They're studying us," Jake realized, "watching to see what we do next." Another plasma blast hit the building, this one catching Roy Peterson in the leg. He went down hard, clutching his thigh as blood poured between his fingers. The wound was deep, probably hitting the bone. "Lisa," Jake called out, "on it." The medic moved to Roy's side, her broken arm forgotten in the urgency of the moment. She cut away his pants to expose the wound, then went to work with her supplies. Roy's leg was a mess. The plasma had burned through muscle and bone, leaving a wound that would cripple him for life. But Lisa seemed unfazed by the damage. She cleaned the wound, applied more of the silver gel, and wrapped it in bandages that seemed to glow with their own light. "Smart bandages," she explained as she worked. "They'll monitor his vital signs and adjust the medication automatically." When she was done, Roy's bleeding had stopped completely. More incredibly, he was able to stand and put weight on the injured leg. "It still hurts," he said, "but I can walk." Jake shook his head in wonder. "How is that possible?" "Standard field." "Medicine?" Lisa said. "Nothing special." But the Zephyrians clearly thought it was special. Through his binoculars, Jake could see the commander becoming more and more agitated. It was barking orders to its troops, but they seemed reluctant to advance. "They're afraid," Susan Walsh observed. "Look at them. They're scared." Jake studied the alien positions. Susan was right. The Zephyrians were keeping their distance, even though they outnumbered the humans 20-1. They had weapons that could level the building, but they were not using them. "Afraid of what?" Danny asked. "Of us," Jake said slowly, "of what we can do." The commander's communication device crackled to life, and once again Jake caught fragments of the conversation. "Impossible healing rate. Subjects returning to combat effectiveness within minutes. Recommend immediate withdrawal." "Withdrawal denied," came the reply. "Complete the mission." The commander threw its communication device to the ground in apparent frustration. It raised its weapon toward the medical center and began speaking in English again. "Humans, your healing technology is impressive, but it will not save you. We have more soldiers than you have medicine." Jake looked around at his team. Carl was back on his feet, his chest wound sealed and his breathing normal. Roy was standing guard despite a leg injury that should have left him unable to walk. Danny continued to fight with his shoulder wound completely forgotten, and Lisa Turner, with a broken arm and bloody face, was calmly reloading her rifle with one hand while keeping her medkit ready with the other. "Maybe," Jake called back to the commander. "But we're not planning to find out." He raised his rifle and took aim. The second phase of the battle was about to begin, and Jake was starting to understand why the Zephyrians were so worried about humans with medkits. They were not just soldiers anymore. They were something else entirely. The Zephyrian assault came harder this time. Jake watched through his scope as the aliens moved with deadly purpose, their forearms allowing them to carry multiple weapons and fire in different directions at once. They had decided to end this fight quickly, before the humans could perform any more of their impossible healing. "Here they come!" Jake shouted over the sound of plasma fire. "All positions, hold the line." The medical center shook as heavy weapons pounded the reinforced walls. Chunks of concrete fell from the ceiling, and the air filled with dust and smoke. Jake could see cracks spreading across the walls where the plasma cannons had hit. A Zephyrian shock trooper burst through the hole in the east wall, its weapon already firing. Jake spun and put 3 rounds into its chest, but the creature's armor absorbed most of the impact. It staggered but kept coming. Carl Brooks appeared from behind a medical cabinet and emptied his magazine into the alien's back. The creature finally went down, but 2 more took its place. The battle was turning into close-quarters combat, exactly what Jake had hoped to avoid. "They're inside the building," Danny Kim called out, firing at shadows moving through the smoke. Jake tried to coordinate his team's defense, but the Zephyrians were everywhere. Their natural armor and superior numbers were beginning to tell. Roy Peterson went down again, this time from a plasma blast to the stomach. Susan Walsh took a hit in the back that sent her crashing into a wall. "Lisa, we need you," Jake shouted, but Lisa Turner was already moving. Despite her broken arm, she crawled through the chaos of battle, her medkit bouncing against her hip. She reached Roy first, who was curled up on the floor, clutching his belly. "How bad is it?" she asked, pulling his hands away from the wound. "Bad," Roy gasped. "Really bad." The plasma blast had burned through his body armor and into his abdomen. Jake could see the terrible wound, charred and smoking. It was the kind of injury that killed slowly and painfully. Lisa worked quickly, her hands moving with practiced efficiency. She pulled out a larger injection device than Jake had seen before, loaded with a bright red liquid. "This is going to hurt," she warned Roy, then pressed the injector against his neck. Roy's eyes went wide as the drug hit his system. His breathing became deep and regular, and the pain seemed to leave his face. But something else was happening too. His muscles tensed, and his pupils dilated until they were almost black. "What did you give him?" Jake asked. "Combat cocktail," Lisa said, sealing Roy's wound with the silver gel. "Pain suppressors, stimulants, and healing accelerants. He'll be fine for about an hour." Roy stood up, moving with fluid grace despite his terrible wound. His face was calm, almost peaceful, but there was something dangerous in his eyes. He picked up his rifle and checked the action with mechanical precision. "I feel good," he said, "really good." Jake had seen combat drugs before, but nothing like this. Roy moved like a predator, his head turning to track every sound and movement. When a Zephyrian appeared at the window, Roy's rifle snapped up and fired before Jake even saw the target. "Susan needs help," Danny called out. Lisa moved to the next wounded soldier. Susan Walsh was unconscious, blood pooling beneath her from the plasma wound in her back. The injury looked fatal, but Lisa went to work anyway. More injections, more silver gel, more of the glowing bandages. Within minutes, Susan was awake and alert. Her eyes had the same predatory look as Roy's, and she moved with the same fluid. "Grace, how many more of those do you have?" Jake asked, nodding toward the combat injectors. "Enough," Lisa said. "But I need to treat you too. I'm not wounded." "You will be." As if summoned by her words, a plasma bolt seared past Jake's head, close enough to singe his hair. He dove for cover, but not before another blast caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around and sending him crashing to the floor. The pain was incredible. Jake had been shot before, but plasma weapons were different. They burned as they cut, leaving wounds that seemed to keep hurting long after the initial impact. He could smell his own flesh cooking. "Jake!" Lisa was beside him instantly, her medkit already open. "I'm okay," he lied, trying to stand. His left arm would not work properly, and blood was soaking through his uniform. "No, you're not." Lisa cut away his shirt to expose the wound. The plasma had burned through his shoulder, probably damaging the bone. "This is going to hurt." She pressed the combat injector against his neck. Jake felt the drug hit his system like a lightning bolt. The pain disappeared instantly, replaced by a feeling of incredible strength and clarity. His vision sharpened until he could see individual dust motes floating in the air. His hearing became so acute that he could track the movement of every Zephyrian in the building. "Wow," he breathed. "Yeah," Lisa said. "Now you know why they're scared?" Jake stood up, testing his wounded arm. It moved perfectly, with no pain or weakness. In fact, he felt stronger than he had in years. His mind was crystal clear, processing tactical information at superhuman speed. A Zephyrian rounded the corner, its weapon already firing. Jake moved without thinking, faster than he had ever moved before. His rifle came up in a perfect shooting stance, and 3 rounds punched through the alien's armor before it could react. The creature went down, but Jake was already moving to the next target. Time seemed to slow as he flowed through the battle, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to dodge plasma bolts that would have killed him minutes earlier. "Carl, Danny, you need treatment too," Jake called out. "I'm fine," Carl protested, but Jake could see the exhaustion in his friend's face. The plasma burn was taking its toll, even with Lisa's medical treatment. "Trust me," Jake said. "You need this." Lisa moved through the team, treating each soldier with the combat cocktail. One by one, they transformed from desperate defenders into something else entirely. Their movements became fluid and precise, their aim perfect, their tactical thinking enhanced beyond normal human limits. The Zephyrians began to fall back. Jake could see the confusion in their movements as they faced humans who refused to die and fought with inhuman skill. Plasma bolts that should have been fatal were shrugged off. Wounds that should have crippled were ignored. "What are we?" Danny asked, his voice eerily calm as he reloaded his rifle. "We're what happens when humans don't give up," Jake said. The battle turned into a rout. The enhanced Marines moved through the medical center like ghosts, appearing and disappearing in the smoke and dust. Every shot found its target. Every movement was perfectly calculated for maximum effect. Jake found himself face to face with the Zephyrian commander. The alien was bigger than its troops, with golden armor and weapons that hummed with deadly energy. Under normal circumstances, Jake would have been outmatched, but these were not normal circumstances. The commander fired first, its plasma weapon cutting through the air where Jake had been standing. But Jake was no longer there. He had moved with impossible speed, flanking the alien and putting his rifle barrel against its head. "Surrender?" Jake said calmly. The commander's multiple eyes focused on him with what looked like terror. "Impossible. You were dying. I got better." Jake pulled the trigger. The Zephyrian commander fell, and with it, the organized resistance began to crumble. The remaining aliens fought with desperation, but it was too late. They were facing humans who had been pushed beyond their limits and had found something incredible on the other side. Lisa Turner stood in the center of the medical center, her medkit open and her broken arm forgotten. Around her, the enhanced Marines continued their deadly work. She had turned ordinary soldiers into something the galaxy had never seen before. "How long will this last?" Jake asked, feeling the drug beginning to fade. "Long enough," Lisa said. "But we're going to need more supplies." Jake looked around at his team. They were winning, but the real battle was just beginning. The Zephyrians would send reinforcements, and when they did, they would know exactly what they were facing. Humans with medkits were not just soldiers. They were something far more dangerous. The silence that followed the commander's death was broken by the sound of more ships landing outside. Jake looked through the shattered windows and counted at least 6 new Zephyrian vessels, each one bigger than the first wave, his enhanced. Vision let him see the aliens pouring out of the ships like angry insects from a disturbed nest. "They brought friends," Carl said, his voice still carrying the calm tone of the combat drugs. "How many?" Lisa asked, checking her medical supplies. The medkit was running low after treating the entire team multiple times. "Too many to count," Jake replied, "but they're different. Bigger, better armored. The new Zephyrians were indeed different. These were elite troops, their armor gleaming black with silver markings that identified them as the Death Guard." Jake had heard stories about these soldiers. They were the Zephyrian Empire's best, enhanced with their own technology and trained from birth to kill. "Elite units," Danny observed, watching the aliens form up into perfect battle lines. "They're not taking any chances this time." A new voice echoed across the battlefield, speaking in perfect English with no accent. "Humans of New Haven, I am War Commander Thexfer of the Death Guard. Your resistance ends now." Jake moved to the window and called back, "Come and take it. You have impressed us with your healing technology. But you face soldiers who cannot be healed because they do not fall. Surrender your medic and the rest of you will be allowed to live." "Not happening," Jake said. "Then you have chosen to die." The attack began with a precision that made the first assault look like child's play. The Death Guard moved in perfect formation, their weapons firing in coordinated volleys that turned the air into a deadly web of plasma. But they were not trying to destroy the building, they were trying to isolate Lisa. "They're targeting me specifically," Lisa said, ducking, as a plasma bolt seared past her head. "Stay in the center of the room," Jake ordered. "We'll form a perimeter around you." The enhanced Marines moved with fluid grace, their improved reflexes allowing them to dodge attacks that would have killed normal humans. But the Death Guard were not normal enemies. They anticipated every move, countered every strategy, and slowly began to force the humans back. Roy Peterson took a plasma bolt to the chest that would have killed him instantly without Lisa's treatment. Instead, he staggered, looked down at the smoking hole in his armor, and kept fighting. The silver gel was already sealing the wound, and the combat drugs kept him moving despite injuries that should have dropped him. "This is impossible," one of the Death Guard called out in their own language. "The humans will not die." "Then we kill them more thoroughly," came the reply. The elite aliens changed tactics. Instead of trying to kill the humans outright, they began targeting limbs and joints, trying to disable rather than destroy. But even this strategy failed as Lisa's treatments allowed the wounded to continue fighting with damaged bodies. Susan Walsh lost her left arm to a plasma cannon. The limb severed cleanly at the shoulder. She screamed in pain and rage, but Lisa was already there with emergency medical supplies. Within minutes, the bleeding had stopped, and Susan was back in the fight, firing her rifle one-handed with deadly accuracy. How is she still fighting? War Commander Thexver demanded over the communication channels. Unknown, his subordinates replied. Human medical technology exceeds all projections. Jake realized that the Death Guard were becoming rattled. These soldiers had never faced an enemy that simply refused to die. Every tactical manual they had ever studied assumed that sufficient damage would remove opponents from the battlefield. But the humans kept coming back, patched up and ready to fight again. Lisa, Jake called out during a brief lull in the fighting, how much more of that combat drug do you have? Enough for one more round, she said, reloading her rifle. But after that, we're on our own. A new sound filled the air. The Death Guard were bringing up their heaviest weapons, plasma cannons that could level buildings. Jake could see the massive guns being assembled on the hills around the medical center. They're going to bring the whole building down, Danny sighed. Not if we stop them first, Jake replied. Roy, Susan, you're with me. We're going to take out those cannons. What about Lisa? Carl asked. She stays here. You and Danny protect her? Jake looked at his medic, this young woman who had single-handedly turned the tide of battle. Keep patching us up. We're going to need it. The three enhanced Marines moved out into the darkness, their improved senses allowing them to navigate the battlefield like ghosts. The Death Guard had set up defensive positions around their heavy weapons, but they were not prepared for humans, who moved faster than their armor's targeting systems could track. Jake reached the first plasma cannon. Just as it finished charging, the weapon hummed with deadly energy, ready to fire. He put a full magazine into the power coupling, watching sparks fly as the cannon overloaded and exploded. Roy and Susan hit the other cannon simultaneously, their attacks coordinated with inhuman precision. The Death Guard responded quickly. But the enhanced humans were already moving to new positions, striking and fading like shadows in the night, but the combat drugs were wearing off. Jake could feel his enhanced reflexes beginning to slow, his perfect aim becoming merely good. Worse, the wounds he had accumulated were starting to hurt again as the pain suppressors faded. Fall back to the medical center, he ordered over the radio. They made it back just as the Death Guard launched their final assault. War Commander Thexver led the charge personally, his massive form cutting through the darkness like a force of nature. Behind him came the remaining elite soldiers, their weapons firing in perfect synchronization. They're coming straight for U.S., Carl said, his voice tight with pain as his own enhancements began to fade. Lisa, we need more drugs, Jake said. I'm out. Lisa held up her empty medkit. That was the last of it. Jake felt a moment of despair. Without the combat enhancements, they were just ordinary humans again. Wounded, exhausted, and outnumbered 20-1. Then he saw Lisa pull out something else from her medkit. It was a small device he had never seen before, with a red button and a warning label in multiple languages. What is that? He asked. Emergency battlefield stimulant, Lisa said. It's not approved for human use. Too dangerous. Define dangerous. It might kill me, but it will definitely make me very effective for about 10 minutes. Jake stared at her. You're talking about using an untested combat drug on yourself? Someone has to. Lisa's finger hovered over the red button. You guys are fading fast. Without medical support, you're dead. With it, we might have a chance. The medical center's wall exploded inward as the Death Guard breached the building. War Commander Thexver stepped through the smoke, his forearms carrying weapons that Jake had never seen before. Behind him came the elite soldiers, their armor scarred from battle, but their weapons still deadly. Surrender your medic, Thexver demanded. This is your final warning. Jake raised his rifle, though he knew it was hopeless. His enhanced reflexes were gone, his perfect aim a memory. He was just a wounded Marine with a nearly empty magazine. Never. Lisa pressed the red button. The effect was immediate and terrifying. Her eyes went completely black, and her body began to move with inhuman speed. She grabbed her rifle and began firing, each shot finding its target with impossible accuracy. But she was not just shooting. She was moving through the battle like a force of nature, treating wounded Marines with one hand while firing with the other. Jake watched in amazement as Lisa performed field surgery on Carl while simultaneously putting 3 rounds into a Death Guard soldier. She moved faster than human eyes could follow, her black eyes tracking multiple targets at once. What has she become? War Commander Thexver asked, his voice filled with something that might have been awe. She's what happens when you threaten. Her patience, Jake said. Lisa Turner, combat medic, had become something the galaxy had never seen. She was death and healing combined, a force that protected life by destroying those who threatened it. And she was just getting started. Lisa Turner moved through the battle like nothing Jake had ever seen before. The experimental drug had changed her into something beyond human understanding. Her black eyes tracked every movement in the room while her hands worked with impossible speed and precision. War Commander Thexver raised his weapon to fire at her, but Lisa was already moving. She rolled behind a medical cabinet, came up firing, and put 3 rounds through the commander's armor before he could react. The massive alien staggered but did not fall. Impossible, Thexver said, looking down at the holes in his supposedly impenetrable armor. Human weapons cannot pierce Death Guard protection. Tell that to my rifle, Lisa said, her voice eerily calm. She moved again, this time to where Danny Kim lay bleeding from a new plasma wound. Without breaking eye contact with the Death Guard. Soldiers. She applied pressure to his wound and injected him with something from her nearly empty medkit. Danny's eyes snapped open, and he was back in the fight within seconds. But Lisa had done something more than just heal him. Jake could see it in Danny's movements. He was faster, stronger, more focused than the combat drugs had made any of them before. What did you give him? Jake asked. Everything I had left. Lisa said, all the experimental stuff mixed together. She was already moving to the next wounded Marine. Carl Brooks had taken another plasma hit, this one to the leg. Lisa treated him with the same mixture of drugs, and Carl rose from the floor like a man possessed. One by one, she transformed the entire team. Each Marine she treated became something more than human, their abilities enhanced beyond anything the Zephyrians had ever encountered. And all the while, Lisa continued to fight, her rifle never missing its target. The Death Guard began to retreat. These elite soldiers who had never known defeat were falling back before a single human medic and her enhanced squad. Their perfect formations broke apart as panic set in. This is not possible, one of the aliens said in their own language. Humans do not fight like this. Retreat, another called out. We need reinforcements. But War Commander Thexver was not ready to admit defeat. He pulled out a weapon Jake had never seen before, something that hummed with energy and made the air itself seem to bend around it. If I cannot capture your medic, the commander said, then I will destroy her. The weapon fired a beam of pure energy that cut through the medical center like a sword. Lisa dove to one side, but the beam clipped her shoulder, spinning her around and sending her crashing into a wall. Jake felt his heart stop. Without Lisa, they were all dead. The experimental drugs she had given them would not last forever, and there was no one else who could provide medical support, but Lisa was already getting back up. Blood ran down her arm from where the energy beam had hit her, but she seemed to ignore the wound. She pulled out one final injector from her medkit, this one labeled with symbols Jake could not read. Lisa, no, Jake said. You don't know what that will do to you. I know exactly what it will do, she said, and I know it's our only chance. She pressed the injector against her neck and pushed the button. The effect was immediate and terrifying. Lisa's entire body began to glow with a soft blue light, and when she looked up, her eyes were no longer black but shining like stars. She stood up slowly, her movements now fluid beyond description. The wound on her shoulder was already healing, the damaged tissue knitting itself back together before Jake's eyes. What have you become? War Commander Thexver asked, his voice filled with something that might have been terror. I am what happens when you threaten my patients, Lisa said. She moved toward the commander, not running but walking with absolute confidence. Thexver fired his energy weapon again, but Lisa simply reached out and caught the beam in her bare hand. The energy crackled around her fingers like harmless lightning. Impossible, the commander breathed. Humans are full of surprises, Lisa said. She reached the massive alien in 3 steps and placed her glowing hand on his chest. Thexver screamed as energy coursed through his body, but it was not killing him. Instead, it was doing something. Far worse. What are you doing to me? He gasped. Healing you, Lisa said. All the way down to your genetic code. I'm fixing every flaw, every weakness, every limitation your species put into your body. The commander's screams grew louder as his body began to change. His armor cracked and fell away as his form shifted and expanded. When the process was complete, he looked nothing like a Zephyrian anymore. You have been improved, Lisa said calmly. Now you understand what humans are capable of. The transformed creature that had once been War Commander Thexver looked at its new form in horror. Then it turned and fled, crashing through the medical center wall in its desperate attempt to escape. The remaining Death Guard soldiers watched their leader run away, then looked back at Lisa Turner. She stood in the center of the destroyed medical center, glowing like an angel of mercy and death, her medkit hanging at her side. Anyone else need medical attention? She asked. The elite aliens broke and ran. These soldiers who had never retreated from any battle fled in terror from a single human medic. Their weapons were abandoned, their formation forgotten. As they raced for their ships, Jake watched the Zephyrian vessels lift off and disappear into the sky, carrying with them the story of what they had witnessed. He knew that tale would spread throughout the galaxy, growing with each telling. How do you feel? He asked Lisa. Different, she said. The glow was already beginning to fade, but her eyes still held that otherworldly light. But still me. Over the following weeks, the story of New Haven spread throughout both human and alien space. The Zephyrian survivors told anyone who would listen about the human medic, who could bring the dead back to life and transform ordinary soldiers into unstoppable warriors. Other alien species began to take notice. Trade delegations that had been planning to visit human colonies suddenly canceled their trips. Military commanders updated their tactical manuals with new warnings about human medical personnel. The Galactic Council received reports that seemed too incredible to believe. Humans who refused to die in battle. Medics who could heal wounds that should have been fatal. Soldiers who fought with abilities beyond any known species. Surely these reports are exaggerated, the council chairman said during an emergency session. Perhaps, replied the Zephyrian representative, the transformed creature that had once been War Commander Thexver. But I would not recommend testing that theory. Jake Martinez received a promotion to lieutenant and a new assignment. As he packed his gear for transfer to another colony, he made sure his medkit was fully stocked with the latest medical supplies. Command had made it clear that every human unit should have proper medical support. The other Marines on his new team looked nervous when they learned about his background. They had all heard the stories by now? Stories about what happened when humans had medkits. Is it true? One of them asked. About New Haven? Jake thought about Lisa Turner, who had been transferred to a special medical research facility where scientists were trying to understand what she had become. He thought about the look of terror in War Commander Thexver's eyes when he realized what human medical technology could really do. Some of it, Jake said. Maybe all of it, the legend continued to grow. Across the galaxy, alien commanders issued new standing orders to their troops. If human forces included medical personnel, retreat immediately. Do not engage under any circumstances. Do not attempt to capture human medics, because everyone now knew the truth that the Zephyrians had learned too late. A human with a medkit was not just a soldier who could be healed. They were a soldier who refused to die, backed by someone who refused to let them, and that was the most terrifying force the galaxy had ever seen. The war between humans and aliens continued, but the rules had changed forever. Humanity had revealed its true weapon, and it was not ships or guns or bombs. It was the simple refusal to give up. Combined with the knowledge to make that refusal matter, Lisa Turner had shown the galaxy what humans were truly capable of, and the aliens would never forget.